Hi and welcome to the video training of design patterns. In this video training we will be discussing Singleton design pattern. Singleton design pattern is one of the simplest design patterns in Java. This type of design pattern comes under creational pattern as this pattern provides one of the best ways to create an object. This pattern involves a single class which is responsible to create an object while making sure that only single object gets created. This class provides a way to access its only object which can be accessed directly without need to instantiate the object of the class. So now let's look at the implementation. We are going to create a single object class. Single object class have its own constructor as private and have a static instance of itself. Single object class provides a static method to get its static instance to outside world. Singleton pattern demo. Our demo class will use single object class to get a single object. Okay, so step 1. Let's create a singleton class. Singleobject.java. So let's go to the editor and we are going to define a class, public class, and its name will be Singleobject. Okay, and now let's define a object of single object. Create an object of single object. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a private static single object equals new single object. Now let's make the constructor private so that this class cannot be instantiated. Make the constructor private so that this class cannot be instantiated. Okay, private single object, and we are not giving any body to this constructor. We are just define it as a private. Okay, now let's get the only object available, and we can get this by public static single object get instance. What this function will do, it will return an object of type single object. Return single object or return instance. So we have defined this as instance, and here we are returning it an instance. And last but not least, we are going to create a function called public void show message. And what this function will do, it will just print out hello world. That's it for our single object class. Save this class, and now we are going to create another class that will be called Singleton pattern demo. You can create this class in the same file as singleobject.java, or you can create a new file called Singleton pattern demo. So let's create a new file and let's name it Singleton pattern demo.java. So what we are going to do in this class is we are going to use the Singleton pattern class that we created just before this one, Singleton pattern demo. Okay, and here what we are going to do is we are going to define the main function public static void main, and this function receive string array as an arguments, and what we can do is we can get the only available object, and that is single object equals single object dot get instance. This is the function that we have defined in our single object class, and what this function will do, it is a static function, and static function exists even if there is no instance or object of a class. So we will just call the static function get instance, and it will return us the instance of the single object class, and we store reference of this object into an object variable, and at the end we are going to use object.show message function. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm going to save this file as well, and now let's go into command prompt and let's compile Singleobject.java. okay, it's compiled, and now let's compile our Singleton pattern demo Java class. okay, it's compiled as well. You can see we have successfully compiled the two classes, Singleobject.class and single pattern demo.class. verifies that they have been compiled successfully and there have been no compilation error. So now we are in a position to run our program, and we can run it by running the Singleton pattern demo class. So Singleton pattern demo class, and you can see we have the hello world here, which we defined in our function called show message. okay, but what we are going to do is we are going to try to create a new object of single object class. Let's try it here. Single object equals to new single object. Let's save this class, and now I'll try to compile Singleton pattern demo.java, and you can see it gives us an error, and it says single object has private access in single object, new single object, because the constructor is private, so it cannot instantiate a new object. Secondly, it says variable object is already defined in method main string, single object got instantiated. That's a separate error. We can handle that by just commenting this. Now save this, and we will have just one error, which is related to the private constructor of the single object class. So this was the first example that we examined for the single object class and the Singleton pattern. Now let's look at a different example of Singleton design pattern, in which we have a class called Singleton, and we have a public string Singleton object name. In this class, what we are doing is we have created a variable, a string variable called string object name, in which we are going to store the name of the Singleton object, and then we have the private static Singleton object, and we have created this object of Singleton class and assigned reference of that class to our object variable, and it is private and static. Now we are going to define the constructor of our Singleton class, which is private. So in no extra object of this class can be instantiated at any cost, and this constructor is receiving a string name, and we are setting the object name of this object to default. And here is the function. This is called a setter function, and I have named it set object name, and this is the getter function which I have named as get object name. So what these functions are simply doing is these are changing the name of the class. The setter function is updating the name of the object, singleton object, and get object name is returning the name of the object as a string. So this is our singleton class, and here is the get instance function which is returning the current object of the singleton class. And now we have our my class, in which we have defined a private singleton parent singleton class variable, and in this class we are going to store this get instance of singleton class into an object variable, and we are going to change the name of the singleton object to Usman, and we are going to print that. We are going to create another reference to the same singleton object. Do mind here that I'm saying reference, I'm not saying an object. A reference is just a variable that is pointing to the same object of the singleton class, so we can have as many references as we want. So these are not objects, these are just references which are pointing to the same object of the singleton class. And you can see here at the bottom I am setting the name of the singleton object to TechWeber, and now I'm going to print the name of all the three objects that I have created above, and you will see in the output that all three objects will have the same name, that is TechWeber. Now I am going to compile my class. So we have it here, Java C, it's singleton, okay, in the class my class, you can see we have created a object singleton of, and we have stored the reference of the singleton object into the obj variable, and we have set the name to Usman, and then we print out the name of the singleton object. Then we created another variable obj2 and stored the reference of the singleton object into this variable obj2, and we again print out the name of the singleton object. Afterwards we created another variable obj3 and we stored the reference of the singleton object in this variable, and we again change the name of the singleton object to TechWeber, and then we printed out the name of all the three variables that are pointing to the singleton object. And let's see what happens. You see the first two outputs are Usman and the last three are TechWeber. So basically what this code is doing is it set the name of the object to Usman first, and we printed out the name of the singleton object. Then we created another reference to the same object called obj2, and we printed out the name of the object name. And it printed out Usman again. Then we created another third variable and we stored the reference to the singleton object into this variable, and we changed the name of the singleton object to TechWeber, and we then printed out the name of the singleton object variables obj, obj2 and obj3. So as you see that all three variables obj, obj2 and obj3 are pointing to the same singleton object, we got the same name, that is called TechWeber. So you can repeat this as well. You can say obj4 create the fourth object and set the name of the object to space or galaxy, and now we try to print the name of the object 3. So what we will get is we will get galaxy at the end, you see. So this is how singleton design pattern works. Now let's look at applications of singleton pattern. There is a lot of applications of singleton pattern like cache memory, database connection, drivers, logging. Some major of them are hardware interface access. The use of singleton depends on the requirements. Singleton classes are also used to prevent concurrent access of class. Practically, singleton can be used in case external hardware resource usage limitation required. For example, hardware printers where the print spooler can be made a singleton to avoid multiple concurrent accesses and creating deadlock. Logger. Singleton classes are used in log file generations. Log files are created by the logger class object. Suppose an application where the logging utility has to produce one log file based on the messages received from the users. If there is multiple client application using this logging utility class, they might create multiple instances of this class, and it can potentially cause issues during concurrent access to the same logger file. We can use the logger utility class as a singleton and provide a global point of reference so that each user can use this utility and number 2 users access it at the same time. The third example is the configuration file. There is another potential candidate for singleton pattern because this has a performance benefit as it prevents multiple users to repeatedly access and read the configuration file or properties file. It creates a single instance of the configuration file which can be accessed by multiple calls concurrently, as it will provide static config data loaded into in-memory objects. The application only reads from the configuration file for the first time, and thereafter from second call onwards the client applications read the data from in-memory objects. The last one is cache. We can use the cache as a singleton object as it can have a global point of reference, and for all future calls to the cache object the client application will use the in-memory object. I hope that you have understood the core concept of singleton design pattern and how we can implement it in Java, and you can implement it in PHP or Python or any other language that supports object-oriented programming or patterns. If you have any question or you need any help, you can contact me at umahmood@gmail.com. You can visit my LinkedIn profile or my Twitter handle. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you next time with a new design pattern. Thanks.